Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Chiara Dorbolò. I am an architect and a researcher. And today we have a workshop which is called Writing Spaces, Designing Stories. This short workshop is part of the Dutch Design Week, as were other activities that were developed by all of us, the recipients of the Talent Development Grant, which was issued by Stimulating Fund. I'm really happy to be here. I decided to do a workshop because I really think that the most valuable thing that I learned this year was definitely about creative process and about general development. And I would like to take this chance also to thank Stimulating Funds because the grant really gave me the space and the opportunity to explore this development and this process without having to focus too much on production and end results and outcomes, which is what we usually have to do as creatives to get by, I guess. So what's going to happen now, I'm going to do a short introduction on who I am and what my creative process is. And yeah, I hope you will enjoy it. And afterwards, we're going to close the live stream and go on with the workshop on Zoom. So a little bit about my background also, because there are some people that do not know me, so I think it's could be interesting. I'm a trained architect, so I graduated at the Amsterdam Academy of Architecture, and my professional background is in design as well as in criticism. So I collaborated with several design offices in the Netherlands, and then I also joined Field Architecture as an editor. Field Architecture is a platform for critical research on the built environment. So I was able to work on these two very different aspects of the profession, we could say. And one of my frustrations actually with it was that these two aspects felt very separated. It didn't feel like there was the necessary connection between design and criticism, but also between theory and practice in general. So this is basically what I decided I wanted to do with my project this year. So I often thought about my graduation project as this last moment in which I was really able to do that, to combine practice and theory, design and criticism. This is a map of Lampedusa. What I really liked about this project is that I was able to integrate the story of my journey to Lampedusa and the history of the island itself into an architecture project. So everything I discovered during my research and like all the different aspects connected to migration and borders were then translated into a really architectural project. And I made what I call the 7 follies of Lampedusa, so 7 interventions that really translated at different levels all these aspects of my research. So yeah, that was, I think, a very interesting process for me. And afterwards, I really started thinking that maybe the key element in this was that I was really able to integrate this story, these stories and this storytelling element in it. So I decided to focus this year and set on these stories and set on a journey to explore both storytelling and creative writing. So I work with different coaches. Some of them coach me in storytelling and some of them in creative writing. Both of these things I've never done before. So it was a very interesting process as well to learn these new skills. And finally, I started writing. I started developing these stories and writing. And the first piece I wrote was very inspiring to me because it really made me reflect on the role of space. Basically, this piece was a fictional, what you could call fictional memoir. And it really focused on some of my experiences as a child, in particular regarding the fact that my parents broke up and that I really had this desire to belong, especially in relation to the context in which I was living, which was a very religious context, but my family was not. So there were all this tension between these different, these different emotions somehow. And what I discovered was that with this story, I could bring together different episodes that happened at different times of my life, but that were connected by this underlying motive, let's say. So what I decided to try and do was do the same with the spaces. So I collected all the spaces in which these episodes were taking place, and I sort of tried to knit them together into these sketches that you see here. So basically, this small intervention was like combining all these spaces that like where these episodes took place. So basically, it is a literal translation of the story in space. And so this is how I started making several of these follies. And what was very interesting to me was not the end result itself, or like all these series of interventions, but actually the fact that making these follies, I started to intervene back with my stories as well. So what happened was that the process then was a combination of like designing these spaces and writing these stories at the same time. So as you could see, I made several ones. Like some of them were more literal, some of them were a bit less and like a bit more abstract. And maybe I can show you here. So this is, I hope you can see it. It's the first one I made. And I think maybe it's the most literal, so maybe even the least interesting, but I can explain a bit. So I combined, for example, you could see the entrance of the church where one of these episodes happened. You could see one of the lateral navies here. You could see this staircase, which was a staircase that belonged to my elementary school. That was from the 20s. And then you could see here a small changing room and one of these wall bars, I think they're called Swedish wall bars, that are usually found in kids' gym. And then up here, again, different church benches with the kneelers in front. So I think, I think that was an interesting process, and it made me discover a lot of different things about my process in general, I think. So now I would like to, So now I would like to read an excerpt from a piece I wrote, which is called The Big House Up the Hill. And the people on Zoom can also follow it on the PDF if you want. For my whole life, my grandmother lived in the same house, in a large but unremarkable town. There is only one way to get there, via the steep uphill road that leads to the town monastery. The road is flanked by old buildings, whose facades are slowly peeling away from their main structures. Beside the stoop sit concrete benches, joining the straight floor of the domestic space to the inclined plane of the street. They're covered in dust, waiting for conversations that will never happen. The house stands at the end of the first stretch of the road, the steepest one, just before it curves to the right and continues to ascend more gently towards the monastery. The bare concrete wall, tall and gray, makes it hard to interpret the building. It might appear to be a prison, only if the gate didn't look so unsafe. To get to the front door, one must climb several sets of stairs. The last one, a double symmetrical staircase. Two specular ramps, starting from opposite sides and running parallel to the facade, lead directly to the door. The shape and position of the building and its front door seem to make no sense compared to the direction of the access from the front gate. But once on top, the reflection on the glass door offers a glimpse of what the house is facing, and it's finally clear. Beyond the sea of rooftops and palm trees and TV antennas, the view opens up in a blue expanse. Still and alive at the same time, the sea dominates the field with such presence that, sorry, something happened with the Zoom meeting. We'll just go on. With such presence that the smell reaches your nostrils and the salt stings your skin on the door of the house kilometers away. The curvy profiles of the island break the straight line of the horizon, if the weather is good but not too good, almost as a reminder that the very spot on which you're standing is an island as well. From the front door, a short corridor leads to the face of Jesus, one of those prints with eyes that always follow you everywhere. On either side of Jesus, you'd find two perfectly identical doors that lead to two perfectly identical corridors. The two rooms at the end of the corridor are identical and opposite, each with a window facing opposite directions, yin and yang. From one of the windows, you can see the concrete wall. From the other one, you can look outside. In one of the rooms, we celebrate Christmas and birthdays. We cooked and laughed. We dyed our hair and we read tarot cards. In the other one, we slept. We waited for the doctor. We looked for old memories. We saw death more than once. So, sorry, I'm gonna stop for a second and check because the Zoom connection was sort of gone. Yeah, I will try to. Okay, so some people are already in. I'm really sorry for who's following us on the live stream, but that happened, so I don't, yeah, I just had to fix it. I'm just gonna make, Roxanne, I'm gonna make you host. Can you please add people if someone else is joining? Yeah, can you do? Yeah, perfect, okay. So let's try again. So, again, sorry, that happens when we do things live, I guess. So the piece I was reading was very important to me. It was written at the beginning of my project, but it was really helpful to understand how many things I could tell, basically just describing the house. So you already have, the piece is much longer, but I wanted to read this short part because you already have elements of the location, of the cultural context, but also more subtle references to what will happen later. So for example, the house is compared to a prison, the street is desert, and there is like this duality in the house that refers to different dualities in the story, in particular between old and new, male and female, life and death as well. And what was really fascinating to me was that if you know The Poetics of Space by Gaston Bachelard, he really talks about these archetypes of the house and in particular about this duality between the cellar and the attic. And I've read that several years ago for the first time, but it wasn't until I wrote this piece and I worked on this intervention that I actually made the connection between these archetypes and realized how these archetypes were also present in the house that I remember, my grandma's house that I remember as a child, even if in this case, of course, the distribution is not vertical, but horizontal. So another piece I would like to read is from, I'm gonna check that everything works, but it seems fine. So another piece that I wrote is called Interior, and I'm gonna read a shorter part. The two apartments were accessed by a communal gallery, outdoor but internal. Outdoor, in which it was an open air space and you could see the sky, but interior, as in completely surrounded by the building and not facing the street. The apartments themselves were not facing the street. Interior, they say in Spanish. If I walked all the gallery counterclockwise from my door, I could reach her apartment. 9 steps forward, turn to the left, 5 steps forward, turn to the left, 9 steps forward. But mostly, she was the one walking towards my door. Every day at 4, she took a walk. I know this because the birds downstairs went on like an alarm every afternoon around the same time. One becomes sensitive to patterns when days are just columns in a table. So I started to look at her go every day at 4. Her punctuality seemed to come as a shock to me, yet I never seemed to marvel at how punctual I was in standing up to go look at her every day. So much I thought of age that I believed two specimens of the same species to be two completely different creatures, just because of a few decades. She walked carefully. Every step seemed to have a certain degree of premeditation. Her right hand on the rail acted as a third leg, always the first one to move forward, followed by the right foot and then the left one. She walked almost all the way until my door, but stopped a few steps before reaching it. Then she leaned on the handrail with both arms, looked at the parrots and made some noises, maybe trying to imitate that. That's when they went crazy, singing or screaming like the house was on fire. After a few minutes, she turned her back to me and started her return journey. Left hand on the handrail, followed by the left foot, followed by the right. Let's have coffee across the courtyard. We can dress up and pretend to be at the bar downstairs, and we can tell each other about our day. I always wanted to tell her when she was close to my door before she turned away. But her days were filled with the cotton-like fluff of the sofa blanket, too light to settle down somewhere, rough enough to get stuck in her throat and give us the subtle but persisting impression of choking. What was there to tell? So this, of course, was a very different experiment. It's a fictional piece, and it was an attempt to write a fictional story inspired by a real space. And the space, of course, again, is very important in this piece because it becomes the locus of the current moment. It becomes the symbol of the lockdown. And that, well, of course, the apartment is interior, so it doesn't face the street, as the life in lockdown is interior, as in basically projected in words. So the attempt here was to basically let the setting of the story become not an amplification or a dramatization of the claustrophobia of the lockdown, but actually to lighten that up, because it allowed me to transfer these feelings of, you know, like closeness and interior and lack of space and lack of contact with the outside world to the space, instead of sort of burdening the characters themselves with it. So what I'm working now is a new direction. Again, I'm trying to use my previous experience with critical writing and my experience with storytelling to write pieces that combine creative writing with criticism, personal stories, and theoretical analysis. I recently wrote an essay on my work that will be published soon in a book that combines basically creative descriptions of my walks through different cities with different works that I've taken during the years, moving between disciplines. And I'm working on some more essays on the same, all of the same genre, we could say, but on the meanings of home. So I wanted also to read something from Margaret Atwood, but I think I'm not going to do it because I'm running a bit out of time. So this is a piece that I really like from The Handmaid's Tale. It's basically at the beginning when Margaret Atwood is describing Offred's room. Probably most of you already know the book and maybe the series. But what I think it's really interesting is how these different elements of the room that could be read as almost normal are in a way used to already give away some details about the situation that that the character finds herself in. So, for example, she's describing a room in which all the elements that could be dangerous were removed, and she's describing like an object like this rug on the floor, and she says this is the kind of touch they like, folk art or kite made by women in their spare time from things they have no further use. A return to traditional values. Waste not, want not. I'm not being wasted. So basically she's already talking about them, the kind of touch they like. So she's giving away details about this oppressive situation, but without describing the general context itself, but just describing the space of one room. And I think it is brilliant because in this apparently, like, you know, meaningless details, she's already creating a whole story. So yeah, this is just a sequence of images that we're going to use later today in the workshops, and I think they are great for imagining different stories. So I hope they are a good source of inspiration for the work we're going to do. And on that note, I think I'm just going to close the live stream. Thank you all for bearing with us, even with a little technical problem. And please, if you have any questions, feel free to get in touch with me. And now I'll just go back to my workshop. So thank you so much, and bye.